Hello, and welcome back to the Whispers of History. Wherever you are, and whatever time your clock may be softly ticking, I'm glad you've decided to spend this little slice of the evening with me. Before we settle in, I'd love to know where you're watching or listening from, and what time it is where you are. Are you curled up under a blanket at 10, resting in a hammock somewhere tropical as midnight humps past? Or perhaps it's 3 in the morning and you're keeping company with owls and quiet thoughts. Either way, you're in good company here. If you enjoy these slow, calming journeys through history and wonder, it would mean a great deal if you tap the like button or gently nudge the subscribe bell. No rush, of course. We've got all the time in the world. Tonight, we're going to take a very slow walk through some very slow histories. So patient, so deliberate, that they make glacial movement look impulsive. The history of slowness is ready to begin. The surprisingly long history of spoons, a boring sleep story. Part 1, a gentle beginning. Welcome to a journey you may not have expected. A journey not of war or kings or empires, but of spoons. Yes, spoons. Simple, humble, and often forgotten, the spoon is a quiet companion to human history. It does not shout. It does not conquer. It simply scoops and stirs and rests quietly beside our plates. Tonight, we will follow the spoon through the ages, from the dawn of human civilization to the finely crafted silver utensils of European courts to the plastic cafeteria spoons of the 20th century. You don't need to stay awake for it all. In fact, it's perfectly fine. If you drift off, that's what we're here for. There are no tests, no pop quizzes, just you, your pillow, and spoons. Let us begin far back in time to a moment before metal, before writing, before agriculture even, when humans were just beginning to eat together around the fire. Part 2, prehistoric spoons, the earliest tools. Before the invention of spoons, there were shells and flat stones and pieces of wood. Imagine a riverbank, tens of thousands of years ago, a person crouched by the water's edge, scooping up berries into a concave bit of bark, dipping it into a stream, tasting. This may have been the first spoon. Not a spoon as we know it, perhaps, but a tool for lifting food to the mouth, a shape, curved, perhaps slightly, easy to hold, helpful, simple. As time passed, early humans learned to shape bone and wood, to carve, to scrape, to smooth rough edges. In archaeological sites, we've found fragments of what might be spoons, made from antlers, or ivory, or the shoulder blades of animals, rough, but functional. In cold climates, these spoons may have helped sip hot broth. In warmer ones, perhaps porridge, or mashed roots, or the juices of crushed fruits. They didn't look like silverware, but they had the spirit of spoons, carved by hand, one at a time, passed from parent to child. Spoons were personal, quiet tools for quiet lives. No one wrote epic poems about them, but they were there, in every meal, every quiet sip, and they endured. Part 3, ancient civilizations. Spoons become symbols. As the world changed, so too did the spoon. The rivers of Mesopotamia flowed between vast cities. The Nile gave life to fields of grain and papyrus, and human hands began shaping spoons not just for eating, but for meaning. In ancient Egypt, spoons were carved from wood, ivory, and stone. Not just tools, but symbols. Some had intricate handles, carved with animals, gods, and sacred shapes. Archaeologists have found spoons buried in tombs, wrapped in linen, placed beside cosmetics and ointments and small vessels of oil. You see, the spoon had begun to transform It was not only for food, it was used to mix perfumes, to apply powders, to measure small amounts of precious substances. There is one spoon, carved from ivory, its handle shaped like a swimming girl, her hair braided, arms stretched behind her, and on her back, a bowl, a spoon, and a piece of art. In temples, priests used spoons to scoop incense, to offer it in rituals, small graceful motions, performed daily, for generations. In Mesopotamia, clay tablets told the stories of gods and kings, and in kitchens, simple spoons stirred pots of lentils and grains. Some were flat, some shallow. They were not standardized, not mass-produced. Each one, made by hand, a wooden ladle in a farmer's hut, a carved shell in a merchant's house, a bronze scoop in the palace kitchen. Spoons were not flashy, but they were everywhere, useful, reliable, silent companions to the rise of civilization. In ancient China, as early as the Shang dynasty, spoons were cast in bronze, beautiful, long-handled, with elegant curves. Some were made not only to eat with, but to serve, to stir medicine, to measure spices. The earliest Chinese spoons often had square bowls and flat handles, simple, balanced. Their weight felt deliberate, as if they were meant to be handled slowly, mindfully. Later, porcelain spoons appeared, glazed white and cool to the touch, still used today in soups and broths across Asia. Thousands of years ago, a person in a quiet courtyard may have lifted such a spoon, sipped hot tea, and watched the steam rise. Not much has changed. And in the Indus Valley, though few spoons remain, we know from pottery shards and tools that meals were shared, that food was prepared with care, and where there is soup or stew, there is likely a spoon. So you see, even in these early civilizations, the spoon was never just a piece of cutlery. It was a brush for powders, a scoop for incense, a tool for healing, and a sign of care, passed from hand to hand, generation after generation. If you're still awake, you're doing wonderfully. And if you're starting to drift, let that be okay too. We'll keep going. Next, to the lands of the Greeks and Romans, where spoons took on new shapes and dined beside philosophers and emperors alike. Part 4. Spoons of the Greeks and Romans. Tools of the cultured table. As we drift gently into the world of the ancient Greeks and Romans, we find the spoon, once again, evolving. The Greeks loved symmetry, balance, beauty in function, and their spoons reflected this. Often made of bronze or silver, Greek spoons were small, delicate, sometimes shaped with thin handles, sometimes with tiny hooks, to hang from belts or kitchen walls. In homes of wealth, spoons were engraved, not ostentatious, no, but precise, each one shaped by a metalworker's hand, warmed by a hearth, then cooled, polished, placed beside bread and olives. Greek spoons were used not only for food, but for medicine, to stir herbs into wine, to measure honey or olive oil. They were also used in rituals, to pour small offerings to the gods, to honor the quiet rhythm of life and death, of meal and memory. In Rome, the spoon took on a name, cochlear. The word may sound strange, but it has lived on. It gave rise to the English word cochlear, as in cochlear implant, something shaped like a spiral, because many Roman spoons had spiral handles, thin and twisted, light in the hand. The cochlear spoon had a small, pointed bowl, perfect for reaching into narrow-necked jars, scooping snails, or eggs, or soft cheeses. Another type of Roman spoon, the ligula, was broader, more like the ones we know today, used for soups or stews, or perhaps sweet desserts made with dates and almonds. Romans dined in reclining positions, lying on couches, eating slowly, using fingers, knives, and yes, spoons. And not everyone had one. Servants brought utensils to the table. Sometimes spoons were shared, sometimes not. They were valuable, not just for their material, but because they were practical. A small item that made eating more refined. In the ruins of Pompeii, archaeologists found spoons left behind, dust-covered, ash-buried, but still whole, frozen in time, a bowl still on the table, a spoon beside it, waiting for a hand that never returned. Even in destruction, the spoon remained, quiet, present, and as the Roman Empire expanded, so did its utensils. Spoons traveled with legions to Gaul, to Britannia, to North Africa, left behind in forts and villas, buried in graves, dropped on stone floors. Wherever people ate, there was often a spoon. And when Rome fell and the medieval world began to rise, the spoon changed again, in form, in function, and in meaning. Part 5. Medieval Spoons. From feasting halls to simple kitchens. When the Roman world gave way to the Middle Ages, the spoon did not vanish. It simply transformed. Across medieval Europe, spoons became both more personal and more precious. In grand feasting halls, nobles dined from silver platters, drank from goblets, and sometimes brought their own spoons. Yes, in many households, you were expected to bring your own spoon to dinner. They were kept on one's belt or tucked into a pouch, a personal item, like a ring or a key. Some spoons were made of wood, simple, carved, unadorned, used in monasteries, in cottages, in quiet corners of the countryside. Others were pewter or bone, and for those with wealth, silver. In fact, silver spoons were often given as gifts at baptisms. The origin, perhaps, of the saying, born with a silver spoon in their mouth. These were not utensils of everyday use, but symbols, status, a sign that a child was born into comfort and care. In monasteries, where meals were eaten in silence, the spoon was one of the few things that made sound. A soft scrape, a gentle tap on a wooden bowl, echoing in a stone hall. Meals were simple: porridge, stewed lentils, cooked barley, and spoons made these meals manageable. No forks yet, at least not commonly. Knives were used, yes, often shared, but the spoon was yours. It touched your lips. It was washed with care and returned to its place. In the kitchens of castle servants, large ladles stirred massive pots over open flames, cauldrons of broth, gruels thick with grains. Spoons were tools of work, burnished by heat, stained by herbs, the handle darkened by years of use, the bowl worn smooth by hundreds, maybe thousands of meals. No one kept records of these spoons. No one praised them, but they were there, feeding the hungry, day by day, quietly, and in the homes of peasants, a single spoon might serve a whole family, handed from one child to the next, used to scoop soup, then washed in a basin of cold water, and set beside the hearth to dry. If the handle cracked, it was wrapped in cloth. If the bowl chipped, it was sanded smooth. A spoon could last a lifetime, or more. By the 14th and 15th centuries, spoons were becoming more refined again. Handles shaped with fleur-de-lis, or animals, or religious symbols, gifted in ceremonies, passed through generations. But still, they remained quiet things. In every castle, in every cottage, spoons did their work. Not loudly, not boastfully, but faithfully. In the next part, we'll move into the Renaissance, where spoon-making became a fine craft, and where the rise of trade and table etiquette began to shape spoons into the forms we know today. Part 6. Renaissance Refinement, the Spoonmaker's Art, the Renaissance, a time of paintings, discoveries, poetry, and precision, and quietly, in homes and workshops across Europe, the spoon began to change once more, no longer just a tool. The spoon became a work of art. In the cities of Florence, Paris, and London, skilled artisans, spoonmakers, set up workshops. They worked in silver, gilded copper, and sometimes gold. Each spoon, carefully cast, polished, etched with initials, or crests, or tiny decorative lines along the handle. These were not spoons for soup alone. They were symbols of civility and of refinement. With trade expanding, new materials arrived from afar: ivory from Africa, mother of pearl from the oceans, exotic woods with rich dark grains, and the wealthy wanted spoons that reflected their worldliness. Some spoons had twisted stems, like vines. Others had decorative knobs, tiny lions, cherubs, or fruits. They were shown off during meals, displayed in cabinets, and given as wedding gifts. In this time, dining was becoming more formal. The idea of table manners was growing. People no longer ate entirely with their hands. They used knives, spoons, and soon, forks. But forks were still new, a little strange. Spoons, though, spoons had trust. They were used for stews, which remained common, for custards, broths, and sweet puddings, foods that required gentleness. In the 16th century, specialized spoons emerged. There were mustard spoons, salt spoons, egg spoons, tiny, refined variations, each with a purpose, each held delicately between fingers, used for one moment, then set down with care. In England, spoons called apostle spoons became popular. Each one bore a small figure of an apostle at the tip of the handle, 12 in a set, sometimes 13, with Christ in the center. They were often given as christening gifts, a symbol of faith and of nourishment, body and spirit. At this time, spoons were also appearing in cookbooks. Recipes said, a spoonful of honey, stir with a silver spoon, simmer until the spoon stands upright. The spoon had become a measure of precision, and yet, still a simple object, a small thing, warmed by use, passed between hands. A child might watch a mother stir with one. A servant might polish one after the meal. An artisan might engrave one by candlelight. Quiet moments, all centered around a spoon. And so, as the Renaissance flowed into the early modern world, spoons were no longer just personal items. They were becoming part of the shared table, laid beside each plate, expected, polished, part of the choreography of a meal. Part 7. Standardization and the Birth of the Modern Spoon. By the 17th and 18th centuries, the spoon was no longer a luxury for the few. It was becoming a standard item in households, from the modest to the noble. The age of standardization had begun. Trade had grown. Workshops had multiplied. And the idea of matching tableware sets was taking hold. In England and across Europe, spoon patterns were becoming consistent. Bowls became more oval. Handles became longer and flatter. It was no longer just about artistry, but about reproducibility. Silversmiths worked in growing cities like London, Sheffield, and Birmingham. Their spoons were now hallmarked, stamped with small symbols, to show the maker, the city, and the year. A spoon could now be traced, not just by its shape, but by the tiny marks on its underside. There were spoons for tea, spoons for dessert, spoons for gravy, cream, and condiments. The names grew: tablespoon, teaspoon, dessert spoon, salt spoon, serving spoon, each with a purpose, each part of a growing culture of order and refinement. In France, spoons followed elegant rococo curves, decorative swirls, and floral etchings, a sense of lightness, a celebration of form. In Germany, spoons were heavier, more robust, often engraved with family initials or local crests. In colonial America, spoons were both imported and made locally by smiths in towns and villages. Some had long, simple handles, others delicately patterned, all of them treasured. A silver spoon might be passed down from mother to daughter, not because of its shine, but because of the hands it had passed through, used for birthdays, for holidays, for quiet breakfasts on ordinary days. The Industrial Revolution was just over the horizon. Factories would come, machines would hum. But for now, in the 1700s, spoons were still made largely by hand, hammers tapping metal, files smoothing edges, hands polishing. It took time and care. And though the world was changing, though empires were rising and falling, the spoon remained steady, a tool of the everyday, unchanged in its purpose, from porridge to pudding, from broths to teas. The spoon did its work, and then the machines came. Part 8: The Industrial Spoon, Mass Production and Everyday Use. The 19th century brought many things: steam, steel, smoke, speed, and quietly, amid the whirring gears and clanging metal, it brought the mass-produced spoon. Factories rose in cities across Britain, America, and Europe, where once a silversmith could make perhaps a few spoons a day. Now a machine could press hundreds. Spoons were stamped, pressed, rolled, and polished on conveyor belts, and for the first time, everyone could own a spoon. Not just one, but many, entire sets, matching cutlery, forks, knives, and spoons, laid in neat rows, wrapped in cloth, stored in boxes, no longer hand-carved or uniquely engraved, but consistent, affordable, ordinary, in the best possible way. In Victorian England, spoons became part of rituals. Afternoon tea was served with teaspoons, small, dainty, and often ornate. Sugar spoons scooped tiny cubes. Jam spoons dipped into glistening jars. Grapefruit spoons had sharp, serrated tips designed just for citrus. Spoons for eggs. Spoons for cream. Even souvenir spoons emerged, decorated with crests, monuments, or flowers, mementos from seaside holidays or capital cities. You could visit a place and bring home a spoon. In America, spoons were sold in catalogs. In Sears, Roebuck and Company, a family could order a full set, from teaspoons to serving ladles. They came in silver plate, a thin layer of silver over base metal, shiny but affordable. And soon, flatware drawers became standard in kitchens, organized, labeled, a slot for each spoon. Children learned early. That's a soup spoon. That's a dessert spoon. That's grandma's spoon. Spoons became family objects, familiar, trusted, not heirlooms always, but always there. The shapes of spoons began to solidify. The oval bowl, the narrow neck, the tapered handle, these were no longer the marks of a craftsman, but the results of design choices tested, refined, and repeated. The spoon had reached a kind of maturity, not flashy, not novel, but perfectly, comfortably, complete. Even so, there were still spoon makers, people who took pride in finer flatware, companies like Oneida, Gorham, and Christoffel. They made spoons for kings and presidents, for railroads and restaurants, for fine hotels and steamships. A formal place setting might include a soup spoon, a fish spoon, a dessert spoon, a demitasse spoon, each one designed for a single, specific moment of the meal. It was a choreography of spoons. And yet, in a cottage or farmhouse somewhere, a child still stirred a pot with a single bent spoon, one that had served every purpose, every meal, every day. Not beautiful, not engraved, but loved. Part 9. The 20th Century Spoon. From diners to space travel. The 20th century came roaring in: wars, radio, cars, electricity. And somewhere, amid it all, a spoon rested in every drawer. No longer rare, no longer handmade, but always present. In the early 1900s, spoons were deeply domestic. There was the everyday teaspoon, used for stirring tea, measuring ingredients, feeding infants. There was the tablespoon, the quiet workhorse of kitchens, used for serving casseroles, ladling soup, dishing out mashed potatoes on Sunday afternoons. In the era of the Great Depression, spoons became part of daily survival. Soup kitchens fed thousands, and in their hands, plain, dented spoons. Reliable, unremarkable, essential. Even in the hardest times, you could eat from a spoon. During the boom of the 1950s, a different kind of spoon emerged. Chrome-plated, streamlined, styled for modern kitchens and diners. Spoons clicked against milkshake glasses, clinked on counters of neon-lit diners, scooped up mashed peas on formica tables, balanced in the hands of children watching black and white televisions. Then came plastic, disposable, cheap, everywhere. Airplanes, school cafeterias, picnics, hospitals, white spoons, clear spoons, spoons that bent too easily, that snapped if used too hard. But they serve their purpose. And in hospitals, especially, a simple plastic spoon brought comfort: chicken broth, applesauce, warm milk before sleep. In the Cold War era, spoons went to space. Yes, the astronauts of Apollo missions and beyond ate with spoons designed for zero gravity, rounded, sealed, magnetic, designed to avoid spills. But still, spoons, because even in orbit, a human being needs to scoop, to stir, to eat. Back on Earth, spoons continued to evolve quietly. Stainless steel became the material of choice. Durable, unfussy, no tarnish, no polish needed. In every drawer, a handful of them. No need to match, no need to shine, just there. Spoons also became playful. There were baby spoons with rubber tips, novelty spoons shaped like airplanes, measuring spoons in rainbow colors, collector's spoons with state names, landmarks, or birthstones. The spoon had become, at once, deeply functional and delightfully whimsical. And still, it was used for comfort. Ice cream after heartbreak, soup in the cold of winter, oatmeal for someone sick in bed, pudding for a grandparent in a quiet nursing home. The spoon, always gentle, always present. It doesn't cut, doesn't pierce. It lifts and carries. A small curved cradle for food, for care, for love. Part 10. The spoon. Today, a simple object, a silent companion. The spoon, after all these centuries, has not changed much in shape, but its place in our lives remains both ordinary and profound. Today, the average household has dozens of spoons, some matching, some mismatched, some that appeared from nowhere, perhaps left behind by a friend or tucked into a drawer long ago by someone now gone. And yet, we still know them. We have our favorites: a deeper soup spoon for the perfect bite, a small teaspoon that stirs just right, a smooth-handled one for cereal on slow mornings. Spoons are often the first utensil a child uses. Tiny plastic ones, bright colors, soft edges, held clumsily by little fingers, then more confidently, with time, learning to scoop, to lift, to bring nourishment to the mouth. The first taste of independence, served on a spoon, and for the elderly, sometimes the last utensil they use, before hands grow too tired for forks and knives. A spoon is forgiving, easy to hold, gentle to the touch, no sharp edges, no resistance. It is a companion from start to finish. In our world of glowing screens and noise, the spoon remains quiet. You do not need to plug it in. It does not vibrate. It does not beep. It simply helps. Day after day, a spoon waits beside a cup of tea, beside a bowl of rice, beside medicine when we are ill, beside cake when we celebrate. It is there in silence. It never asks for attention, but we reach for it over and over again. It has crossed oceans. It has passed from hand to hand. It has gone to space and come back to your drawer. It has held soup and medicine, sugar and sorrow, comfort and joy. And even in the age of innovation, the spoon still does exactly what it always did, perfectly. And now, as you rest, perhaps in a quiet room, or as you drift toward sleep, know this: somewhere nearby, a spoon sits in the drawer, waiting, ready, faithful, a small curved reflection of the human story, simple, useful, enduring, like time itself. Thank you for traveling through this quiet history with me. Now, close your eyes, breathe, and rest. Let the world soften. Let the past settle gently around you, and let the spoon, humble and still, carry you softly into dreams.